This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome in, everybody. Sports Daily on a Wednesday. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers producing for us, and dadgummit, the streak is over. No more AL win streak, and the All-Star game ends at 9 years. Elias Diaz with a late home run gets it done for the National League, and the NL All-Stars reign victorious. And what was a good All-Star game, I thought, Tommy? It was, we had the Mariner up at the end of the game, plenty of drama in the game. The broadcast things they do in the game now where they've mic'd up a pitcher and a batter as they face off against each other was really, really cool. But there it is. There's the Midsummer Classic, and now we're on to the second half of the Major League Baseball season. The IHOP hotline is open. 869-1240 is that number. We'll have plenty for you here today. Ross Tucker, NFL Insider, joins us in the second hour. Looking forward to that conversation. The Big 12 Media Days are underway almost. I think they start here pretty shortly, but we will get all kinds of stuff coming out of the Big 12 Media Days. I'm probably honestly most interested to hear from Brett Yormark, as we always have expansion on the brain. Speaking of expansion, little nuggets sort of dropped out as far as expansion goes to the NBA, to Major League Baseball. Always will have us wondering as it pertains to the NBA if Kansas City would be an option for a basketball team. But a lot on the table here today. Tommy, how are you?
I'm okay. A little tired today, but, we have those days. It happens every once in a while. But middle of the week and hopefully, the end of the week as we move on will be a little bit easier than the first half has been.
Yeah, we're on. It's hump day. We're at the top of the peak. We're headed downhill the rest of the way. It'll be, like 110 degrees, what it'll feel like out there today. So stay safe, everybody. Stay cool. It's humid. It's muggy. I went for a walk this morning, early, and I think it was, like 75 degrees, and I was sweating like a pig by the time I was done. I can't imagine what it's going to feel like in about 5 hours when it's, 100 degrees and that humid. It's going to be brutal out there. So, stay safe, everybody. Ugh. It's just sweat factory,
Not
man.
fun.
I sweat, and so moving here from essentially the desert where I'd lived my whole life, like I never stop sweating. I get made fun of for it. I mow the yard in like a bandana, like a headband, like a rock star would wear, and my family makes fun of me for it. It's like, well, sorry, I need to be able to see, and unless I want sweat in my eyes the entire time, I gotta have it. So
good news is that looks like this like really oppressively hot weather is only for like a day, like only today. And then it starts to cool off, which is good. I mean, it gets really brutal when you've got long stretches of it. I feel like if we can get through a day, it should be fine.
For me, though, like it doesn't make a whole lot of difference if it's like 90 and that humid or 100 and that humid. Like I'm toast either way. It is what it is. We've been pretty fortunate as far as temperatures go this summer. So we'll see if that continues. But that's out there today, as most of us will recognize very quickly. If you are one of those who are driving around and you work in that heat, hopefully we can, entertain you while you're in the truck cooling off a little bit. All right, Tommy, we got all kinds of stuff happening. There's a story out at ESPN too, and we're not going to get into it right now, but man, it digs into the connections of the John Gruden emails to Dan Snyder and Roger Goodell. And it's this just like drama fest, like straight out of Hollywood mess. And it's just like, man, sometimes I'm glad I'm not at a high enough level professionally that I have to deal with that kind of crap. Like it's crazy. And I just, let's just watch the football games, but this stuff is like soap opera drama. It's crazy. It's out on ESPN. You can check that out. We'll get into it at some point, but there are plenty of things to get into. All-Star game. What'd you think of the All-Star game last night? Outside of your National League winning it, and snapping the streak finally. What'd you think?
I really think that the biggest piece that was intriguing to me was the reception of Shohei Ohtani in Seattle. I mean, I don't know if you noticed that the fans were all about him, which I don't blame them. I would be too. But he was asked about it. He's asked about Seattle. Shohei says that he spent off seasons in Seattle, loves that city. I wonder if he could end up being a Mariner. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to pay him what he wants when that all comes to, happen at the, during the off season and all of that. But they certainly, the fan base there in Seattle, they were really excited to see him.
It's got the Ichiro connection. Who Shohei will pass Ichiro, but Ichiro, as I'm saying that out loud and trying to remember like hype, Ichiro had that kind of hype too coming in. Now Shohei will surpass it and maybe already has. I'm not sure because
I think he probably already has.
Ichiro mania was wild, man. So it would make some sense. Seattle has spent big money on players in the past. It's a great fan base. It's a great stadium. It's a, by all accounts, great city. One of the ones on my list that I have not actually been to. But yeah, the Shohei Ohtani piece of all of this is interesting. It just furthers the fact that, like, God, if you're the Angels and every single team in baseball would be in the market. Now, granted, they're going to have a chance to go after him in free agency for free. But maybe that gives a team a leg up. I don't know. They got to trade him, I would think. That will become the biggest storyline, don't you think, of the second half, or at least of the next month is, do the Angels pull the trigger on that? I don't know what would hold them back. The only thing is that they're somewhat in contention. I mean, if you're the Angels, do you tank so that you can trade him and try to get something back? It just sure doesn't seem like there's any chance he's coming back to LA.
Yeah, and I don't know what the status is on Mike Trout. I mean, if he is out for an extended period of time. I know he's on the IL right now. And I don't know if we're looking at a matter of weeks or a matter of months with that wrist injury that he sustained. But, I think that maybe would help dictate a decision from the Angels on what they're going to do. They might still technically be in contention, but I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of hope there. That pitching staff is not good. And really outside of Shohei, they've got an okay lineup, but I just don't see them seriously contending. And especially with Trout on the shelf, does that make their decision a little bit easier to try to go ahead and trade Shohei and get some value in return for him?
Fox Sports reports that the Angels don't want to because they still think they can sign him in the offseason. So that would be one reason, obviously. If they do think they can get him back, then yeah, they're not going to want to trade him because, unless he signed off on that. By the way, unless you said, hey, we'll trade you so you have a chance, but we absolutely want you back here. Is that something that you'd be okay with? Let's have this discussion. I don't know.
I feel like that sort of thing like never happens. Like you trade a player and midway through the season, and then he comes back and signs with your team. I mean, maybe it has.
It does for lower level players. It has for lower level players, but I think it's always like a very open and honest conversation. I don't know that Shohei Ohtani's there because Shohei Ohtani's going to command. I mean, I don't even think Shohei Ohtani knows what he's going to command on the open market. So that would be a tough sell. And if you're his camp or him, it's like, look, guys, like we're going to worry about free agency when we hit free agency because there's nothing we can do right now. And we don't know what to expect. If you're the Angels, I don't know. That's got to be such a difficult place with a player like that because he's this transcendent talent that has clearly captured what baseball has been hoping a player would capture for 20 years, right? Since the home run chase, since the 98 McGuire. So like, when was the last time any singular player, I guess Barry Bonds home run chase after that?
Aaron Judge a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but Aaron Judge, I don't even think Aaron Judge did because I think baseball has lost some of its luster between Barry Bonds and Aaron Judge. I don't know that everybody was locked into Aaron Judge the way that they were Barry Bonds. Maybe they were. I mean, it was making its rounds in pop culture, but I think Shohei Ohtani, even more than a home run chase, which is mind-boggling if you're a baseball person to think anybody could outshine a home run chase, but he has. And by the way, he's on a pace where he could challenge that this year. I I think that he's surpassed that. I think hearing those fans last night is a perfect example of that, of why that is. And man, if that's the case, it's not even really a thought of, are we going to be competitive enough to justify it? Because he is the kind of player that might fill a stadium more or less by himself. At least once a week when he pitches, he will. So
Yeah.
his market is literally everybody. I mean, obviously not the small markets because they can't afford it, but every team that spends in baseball is a potential landing spot for Shohei Ohtani. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. And it's not about a good fit either, because teams will make him fit, right? Like if they're willing to spend the money, I think to an extent, every team that you talk to, they might say, hey, we already have such and such player, or we already have our pitching staff, our pitching rotation is already set and we're comfortable with it. That everything goes out the window with a talent like Shohei Ohtani. And, knowing that every team would covet him, not being able to realistically sign him. I was thinking back on this. How many players can we honestly say have genuinely lived up to the expectations that have been put on their shoulders in Major League Baseball? I know that like there have been tons of players that come out with a lot of hype, and it happens occasionally. I think of like Bryce Harper, for example, broke in when he was 19, and there was a ton of hype and expectations around him. I would say he's probably lived up to that hype, but it doesn't happen very often. And there was so much hype on Shohei Ohtani, and I'll be the first to admit, when he first came in, I knew nothing about him, and I'm like, okay, like it's another international player. He might be a nice piece, but I'm not sure that it's going to be anything crazy. And then, look at what he's done now. I don't know if I don't think it happens often at all where you've got players that break in with this enormous hype. And not only do they live up to the hype, but they actually exceed those expectations.
Yeah. And look, here we are on the All-Star game, and it took us about 5 seconds to start talking about Shohei Ohtani. I mean, that's the reality of what he is. He's young.
Right.
I have not heard anybody, like not one person, that doesn't love watching him play. Like old baseball fans, young baseball fans. He's got a great personality for it. So yeah, that is going to be the storyline over the next week. And look, if the Angels don't trade him, it's not one of those like you could blame them. I don't think if they hold on to him that it's fine, because you got to justify it to your fan base and whatever. So that will be the storyline of the next month. Major League Baseball trade deadline's August 1st. The Rangers, and I didn't even know this until this morning, in the second inning, Tommy, had 6 players on the field together. First time that had happened since 1951. 1951, since 6 guys were on the field together at the same time. Heim was catching, Simeon at second, Seager at short, Young at third, Garcia and right, and Evaldi on the mound. And I was watching that inning, and they probably mentioned it, but I came in and out of that inning. But like, that's crazy too. And when you think about teams desperate to trade, as I look at all the lists of people, the teams, the White Sox are open for business, and like all these things happening, I think you're going to see the Rangers are just one example of teams that have been, in the mix, that remain in the mix, that could get real desperate and overspend at the deadline. I've said this before. I think this is going to be a real seller's market. Big time. I think the Blue Jays are in that camp. Baltimore might be, but they're probably not going to. The Yankees are always in that camp. Boston could make a case to be in that camp, right? Houston could probably even make a case this year to be in that camp.
A random team, the Marlins, I know, they've started making phone calls. The Marlins have made phone calls to try to bolster.
Well, that's what they do, though, right? Like they'll go get real aggressive and then they'll tear it down. So we know they have a history of it. Philadelphia obviously is. Cincinnati's probably more closely related to the Rangers, even though it's different size markets. Cincinnati's got to be a little desperate to do something special too. Milwaukee certainly is, as they're in the mix. The Dodgers always open for business. I think that, the Diamondbacks are sort of like the Orioles, where they're probably just content to ride through with their young players. But the Giants are going to be desperate. San Diego's put all their chips on the table a long time ago. I don't know how they're 4 games under 500, but there's all these teams where desperation, I mean, only the Diamondbacks and the Orioles probably would be like, nah, we're pretty good. I mean, they might make smaller moves, but I don't think they're going to sacrifice the farm. I think Cincinnati might. I mean, it's been a long time for the Reds. The Rangers certainly would, and everybody else would too. If you're a seller at this deadline, like the White Sox, you watch, you're going to clean house here because they have a lot of tradable assets, and it's clearly not working there. They are going to get a ton back for all their players in this deal.
Yeah, and that's where I think the Angels come into play a little bit because, unless they, I don't know, I think it's that they're hanging on a wish and a prayer that they're going to contend this year. And they've got, outside of Shohei Ohtani, they've got some tradable assets, I think, as well on that roster that they can get value for in return. There are other teams that are underperforming this season that you would think, okay, like there are some pieces here that, like the Cardinals, for example. The Cardinals have the worst record in the National League, or one of the worst records in the National League. And there's a ton of talent on that roster. Could Nolan Arenado be traded? Potentially. I know that there've been rumors that, he could, and that he could get a lot of value in return. They've got a lot of talent on that roster, Paul Goldschmidt and others. Wilson Contreras is the new catcher there. And so like there are teams that have valuable pieces, and that those teams are not contending. I'm with you. I think it's going to be an incredibly active trade deadline.
And it makes me wonder if people will get desperate and overspend for Royals players. And really, like, I'm having a hard time making a case for anybody besides Scott Barlow. And there, Carlos Hernandez maybe a reliever, but those aren't. Scott Barlow could be. Scott Barlow, I think you could still make a case for him joining the back end of a bullpen for a contending team and being effective. Like, plenty of teams could use Barlow as a seventh inning guy. You know what I mean? Which does have some value. But that's not going to be much more than that if you're the Royals, unfortunately, because none of the players at the big league level. Salvador Perez enters the spotlight. Salvador Perez at All-Star games is where it really reminds me of how appreciated he will be if he's ever traded for even just for a short spell. And again, I don't even think I want it to happen. I only want it to happen if he wants it to happen, like to go contend. But he's the kind of player that if he wants to be in Kansas City, I hope he never leaves, right? Like he just is that. And his story is so cool, and he's a citizen now and everything that's come up, and he's always played for less money than he's worth, in my opinion. But if he wants to go, he becomes an actual pretty valuable trade asset. Look, if any team would welcome in his bat, in his ability to play three different positions, if you needed him to, I think he'll get traded. I do. But that's August 1st. We got a few weeks, and why wait? Usually the All-Star game is the inspiration to get some deals done. Aroldis Chapman's already been moved. We'll see. I think it's coming soon. The All-Star game, pretty good. We take the break from it all. National League gets the win. Here's the most important question, Tommy. Why have we switched from wearing real uniforms in the All-Star game to wearing real uniforms in the home run derby, and then the gimmick uniforms, they've swapped?
Dollar signs, right? I mean, you're getting more eyeballs on the All-Star game to see these replica jerseys that the National League and American League wear, hoping that people would then go and buy them.
Nobody outside of Seattle's buying those jerseys.
I hate it. I want to see in my All-Star game, and I think this is generally everybody feels the same way.
Yeah.
You want to see players wearing their own jerseys in the All-Star game.
And flip-flop it. I like the gimmick uniforms, but I like them in the home run derby.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care that the guys are wearing the real uniform in the home run derby. Flip it back. Those uniforms, by the way, yesterday, those road uniforms were terrible. The home ones were fine. I didn't have a problem with the home ones, but the black pants with the darkest shade of blue you can come up that doesn't match the black, like those were gross. The home ones were fine. I didn't have any problem with the home ones. Whatever. Nobody cares. 869-1240, the IHOP hotline is open for you. We'll come back. Let's talk about Big 12 Media Days a little bit. We've got Ross Tucker coming up at the top of the next hour. Of course, you're listening to us here on KFH. We appreciate it. You can also catch us on our video streams, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You'll find those available for you. So we make our way through Wednesday, one day before the slowest day on the sports calendar, which is tomorrow. We got lots of guests lined up for tomorrow, so don't worry. But it is. Here we go. We're in the portion, and then after this week, it all ramps back up. This is Sports Daily. Albracht and Castor. We'll be right back.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily, Albracht and Castor. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 coming to Boulevard Theaters in Wichita. You can check it out a day early, giving away a pair of tickets for a special screening tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, Boulevard Theaters at Town West. Let's give away a lot of these on the show today. Jad, we'll start right here with our first one. First caller, 869-1240. You can get your hands on a couple of those movie tickets. Go and see it on us. 869-1240, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Good luck. Tommy, Big 12 Media Days underway for football. It's going to be moderately interesting, I think, at Big 12 Media Days. To me, the most interesting thing is not Kleiman. It's not Leipold. It's not, any individual team or anything. The most interesting thing is what we hear from Brett Yormark as the Pac-12 still without a deal and rumors swirling. How aggressive does he get in this, media scrum, essentially, with the positioning of his league?
I think he will be aggressive, and I think he will be vocal. And the only reason I say that is because that's what we've come to expect from Brett Yormark in his tenure as the commissioner of the Big 12. He has not shied away from being vocal about his desires, his expectations, and the way that he wants to see this conference grow. And I would argue that a big reason why the Big 12 is in the position they're in right now, growing, expanding, not shrinking, not, maybe even on the ropes like the Pac-12 is because Brett Yormark has been vocal and aggressive in what he's wanted to do. So I just don't think that that's going to change today. I think that Yormark will take the opportunity to, again, be vocal. And that the reporters there are going to ask him about that. That's why he's at the podium, right? I mean, he's going to talk about the conference as a whole, but you better believe the media is going to ask him about expansion, and Yormark has shown he's willing to be vocal about it.
Yeah, he has a great opportunity to continue to possess the ball in all of this.
Yep.
He is in the position where he doesn't have to play defense at the moment. It's just like he can sit and just be ready, right, for whatever happens, but say whatever he wants, basically. I don't think there's a lot of risk in it to say, yeah, we're interested in XYZ, name drop the teams. Who cares? We're in a good position. We're open for business. Maybe he can give us specifics. I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's anything really holding him back unless those places have requested that he doesn't do that. But there's nothing to be afraid of at this point if you're Brett Yormark. Nobody's coming after your teams, right? Like you're driving here. What do you want this narrative to look like? And that's been the position of power for the Big 12 all along. Now, the tangible results of all of this are what? They've got their new TV deal, which is the biggest deal, right? They've opened, basketball facilities in, urban New York. They want games in Mexico. So it's all a lot of little things, but it's constant, right? It's a lot of constant chatter, which is cool. And so now you get into this point where, okay, what is the next tangible big thing that Brett Yormark can pull off? And I think expansion's about the only thing, right, on anybody's mind. I wonder what sort of opportunity he'll take here. Look, he could come up there and it could be a total non-starter. It just doesn't really fit his style, though, on what we've seen from him so far as the commissioner.
Yep. That's really not been his MO. And I remember when he was hired as the commissioner, and it was after the tenure of Bob Bowlesby. He was the same guy that basically, went in front of politicians and said the Big 12 was going to die because of Texas and Oklahoma leaving the conference. And now Yormark has come in and done a complete 180 and is young and aggressive and hip and forward thinking and, willing to ruffle feathers, willing to think outside the box. I'm not sure that I 100% agree with everything. Like, I don't know if I love the idea of games in Mexico because you're taking home games away from, some of the teams. I'm not sure I love that, but I understand why it's happening. And I understand what Brett Yormark is trying to do in making this conference a national and even international brand. So I get it. And so, but that's why he's in the role that he's in right now. That's why he's the commissioner of the Big 12. In a world of growth, expansion, contraction, all of that, you've got to stay one step ahead of the game. And I felt like from day one, Yormark has basically been, in my opinion, the only commissioner in the Big 12 is the only conference that's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers.
Well, the SEC and the Big Ten certainly are playing
Well,
chess.
they get to do that because of the stature of their conferences, right? Like they can just go and grab Oklahoma and Texas and USC and UCLA. The Big 12 doesn't have that luxury, so Yormark's got to get creative.
Got to get creative. Sankey is as good as there is. That dude seems to me to be just brilliant and excellent at what he does. The Big Ten's had a little turnover in that role, but they've done a good job, right? They're one of the aggressors. To me, it's not even like it's so apparent what Yormark wants to do and is trying to do, and that is grow just the brand of the league as much as he can. So, appealing to a younger audience, getting international with it is all small things to eventually allow the lead to explode. I've said it a million times. I just don't think that there's a great understanding of the potential of this basketball league. That's where the international thing gets really interesting to me, because there's not really ever been and probably never will be like a secondary thing to the NFL. I mean, it's college football, right, as in totality. But I think that's because it's so far reaching. Like when you hear about the SEC and the Big Ten trying to create this new, I think that's a terrible idea because I don't think that's going to work. But getting international with basketball, and maybe it's okay with football, right? Like I don't know that you're ever going to all of a sudden have Mexico just be all in on the Big 12 brand, right? No, they're going to be all in on the NFL like the rest of the world. But in basketball, boy, you could really, like, there is an opportunity in basketball, I think, to create the number 2 to the NBA. And yes, college basketball as a whole has that through March Madness, but in the regular season, I even think that opportunity is there because you're not really competing with anything. And I think that's where he's headed. I think he's trying to cast this wide net, really drive up the popularity of his basketball league, and then he'll separate basketball from football in a TV contract, and that's where the Big 12 will make money. That's not what he's going to talk about in these meetings. This will be about football, and that'll be about expansion, right? Football is where expansion comes in. I would imagine he gives us – I think he'll give us a couple nuggets. I do. I think he'll give us something to talk about before these league meetings are over with. For K-State and KU, I don't think, Tommy, that there's a whole lot that I'm just like, okay, like I can't wait to hear from these guys. I mean, I want to know for KU what the difference is now coming into this year versus last year, because the expectations are wildly, wildly different. That's intriguing to me, I think. For K-State, how much bulletin board material are they taking? I've read a lot of, like, what do we want to know about the Big 12 coming in and preseason polls? And man, Tommy, to save their lives, and it's the most ridiculous thing, every single year, nobody talks about K-State. Nobody talks about the team that won the league championship last year, that returns its quarterback and entire offensive line. They got voted second by the people that watch this league. Not that that means anything, because if you go back and look at last year's poll, you can throw it right in the trash can. But just like this, when you talk nationally, K-State is almost never brought up. It's crazy.
I think that some of that has to do with just the demeanor of the program and the demeanor of the head coach and, the players for the most part. I mean, Chris Kleiman is, kind of an understated guy, has been. And, it's always easier, I think, for the media to look at a program the stature of Texas or the stature of Oklahoma, and really focus in their efforts there. And I think it's unfair to an extent, But also, I think K-State should want it that way a little bit. Like, let them fly under the radar. Let them be able to go out and have the results on the field do the talking for them. It's a team that won the Big 12 championship, returns a ton of key pieces, and they've got an opportunity to go out and do it again. And so, that doesn't really bother me all that much, because like, if it were me, if I was in that program, I would say, you know what, that's fine. Like, that's going to fuel me. Like, that's going to motivate me. Let's go out and do the work, and we'll prove them wrong again.
Like, at some point, though, playing this underdog gets old, right? K-State has, brought in a great recruiting class. They consistently win. They're as consistent as any team in the league. And what your perception is nationally does matter to the program. Like, it matters in recruiting. It matters in all of these things. At some point, you don't want to be like this quiet little, it's not powerhouse isn't the right word, but like this great program that nobody ever knows about or talks about. You kind of want everybody to know and talk about you. Like that matters. And I don't know what that's going to take. And obviously a Big 12 championship isn't enough. Maybe two of them would be. I don't know. But making the playoff, not showing up well against Alabama certainly did not help. Certainly did not help their case. But that's out there. I think, the other big thing as we look from a bird's eye view is the new teams coming in. And UCF's going to get the most attention. Gus Malzahn there. By most accounts, they have the most talented team of the new group. How much noise can they make? I would suspect probably more than we think that they can, but I can't wait to see that. I don't know what's going to happen. I guess hearing from those new teams at media days will be interesting. It'll be the first time they've gone through this. I would love to, hear a little shade thrown at Texas and Oklahoma. I'm sure that Mike Gundy will be good for a little bit of that, and hopefully a few others will be as well, like the don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out kind of a deal, hopefully. But yeah, it'll sort of be an us versus them with Texas and Oklahoma. But it was, is it as awkward as it was last year, in their lame duck year? Probably not. I would imagine last year was quite a bit more awkward with Texas and Oklahoma than this year will be. I think everybody's sort of over it. And it's just like, all right, we're ready to move on. 869-1240 is the number to call. Congratulations to Eugene for winning the Mission Impossible movie tickets. We're going to give away a lot more of those because today's the last day for us to give them away. Ken, by the way, jumps in and says, Alina Svitolina and Chris Eubanks say hello. I think that's a dig, maybe like a backhanded dig that we're not talking about Wimbledon.
Yeah.
All I can say, Ken, is you're probably going to have to get that insight, that expertise on Wimbledon from another place. I got no issues with tennis, but we're probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on tennis here because we can't offer you very much from it. Wimbledon's happening, everybody.
That's
Chris
about
Eubanks
all I think I can say too. Yeah.
Chris Eubanks is an American, which always has my interest. I'm not downplaying anything. When an American's in the mix, shout out to Coco, right? But when American's in the mix, I'm paying attention. We're just not going to offer you a lot of insight on it. So Wimbledon's happening, everybody. There you go. 869-1240 is the number to call. Let's give away some more Mission Impossible tickets as we go out here as well. See who's going to join Eugene at the sneak peek at Boulevard Town West Theaters. We'll give away another pair here. 869-1240 on the way out of this break. We'll be back with more on Sports Daily.
Go ahead. I think I want to hear this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It is Sports Daily on KFH. Ken having some fun back with us. Darn, on the Wimbledon talk. I just, I don't want to say something stupid again. I don't know a lot about tennis at the current stage of tennis. I'm telling you though, like an American being involved will pique our interest nationally a little bit more, maybe than it would have before. My kids have dabbled in some tennis, young kids, a couple of times now. I'm excited about that. Curious to see. My wife plays tennis, likes tennis. I play baseball. When I try to play tennis, I hit it out of the arena every time. I can't figure it out. I like ping pong, pickleball, big pickleball guy. You big pickleball guy, Tommy?
I played pickleball one time, and when I did, I ripped my pants. So if that tells you anything about my pickleball expertise, it's very, very low.
Shit that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing what happens as we get older. It's amazing. I love pickleball though. Like ping pong. I compare it more to ping pong than tennis. We got Ross
It's kind of
Tucker
like
coming up.
badminton a little bit, right?
I'd never played badminton, so I don't know.
Oh.
I'm not sure. I don't know if it feels the same. It feels like ping pong to me. Like
Gotcha.
you hit the ball sort of the same way. Ross Tucker going to join us at the top of the hour. Curious to hear if he, has the same feel, at least that I do, that it's this sort of waiting game with DeAndre Hopkins and the Chiefs. Because that's what it feels like to me, Tommy, is that Hopkins is just sort of waiting, and And the Chiefs definitely have interest as soon as they can get the Chris Jones deal. We'll ask him about that and a variety of things. Hard Knocks chooses the Jets. I don't know about Tommy. I've never watched an episode of Hard Knocks. I just haven't. It's not anything against Hard Knocks. It's mostly because I don't have HBO. I don't know why it doesn't interest me as much as it, like Paul Savage, it's his favorite show that's ever been made. And I get it. Like, I totally get it. And the Jets are the most decision Hard Knocks has probably ever made. Like, you could probably just take away, don't even call it Hard Knocks. Just mic them up in the quarterback room and get like interactions between Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson and whatever, and you'd have your show. The Jets are they the most juicy team next year to pay attention to? Like, are they the most, and I don't want to call it drama because that's not got a negative connotation. It may not get dramatic, but the most like storyline interesting team to watch in the NFL next year? I think that they probably are.
I think so. I mean, you don't have really any other storylines with any other teams about a quarterback the stature of Aaron Rodgers joining a different team. You've got Derek Carr going to the Saints and Jimmy Garoppolo going to the Raiders, but neither one of them, those don't have the juicy storylines with it like it does Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets and assimilating with a new team and bringing some of his guys over. That's what I'm most interested in learning about in Hard Knocks, is how does that relationship work between Aaron Rodgers and his crew, because he's brought over a handful of guys that he's comfortable with, and the current Jets roster and coaching staff. How do those two sides mesh? So yeah, I'm not sure there's another team in the NFL that's got more storylines with it than the Jets. And so I get why they made that decision.
Well, I think the biggest one is that it's a storyline of, I mean, look, they could be a Super Bowl contender, right? With Aaron Rodgers there. I think that's the difference between them and all the other storylines, is they're the one where it's like that move could be the difference in a Super Bowl win.
Right.
Like nobody else's move, whether it's at, head coach or players coming in, those aren't moves that are going to win a team a Super Bowl. We thought we had several of those last year, right? You thought Aaron Rodgers coming back was potentially that sort of a move. Maybe you thought Russell Wilson going over was that sort of a move. Maybe all the massive free agent additions the Chargers made were that sort of move. You had several of them last year. I don't know that there's any like off-season movement like that this year outside of Aaron Rodgers where you think, boy, that could be the difference in a Super Bowl. Even Lamar Jackson coming back doesn't feel that way to me, even though that probably is unfair to the Ravens. We just feel like the Ravens were probably a little further away. They've had Lamar Jackson. Granted, he was hurt. But Aaron Rodgers with the Jets and that roster, and as good as they were despite the quarterback position last year, yeah, if Aaron Rodgers is like he was 2 years ago and 3 years ago, if he's more like that than he was 1 year ago, they absolutely could win a Super Bowl. I mean, I think that's totally on the table. The Chiefs become the juggernaut, but I think that team, if Aaron Rodgers is great, could be better than Buffalo, better than Cincinnati, could beat Kansas City in a singular, game when it counts in the cold weather where Aaron Rodgers has, been pretty good over his career. So yeah, I get it with Hard Knocks. That's the spot. It's really the only spot that had, like, was there even another option?
I don't think so. I don't see another option that is anywhere close to being as compelling.
I mean, outside
as
of, I
what's
suppose, Kansas City, right? Like, you could
Right.
put them in Kansas City one time that would have people interested, but I'm sure Kansas City does everything it can to not let that happen.
Yeah, it's so compelling with the Jets. It's a no-brainer. I totally am on board with this, and it's going to be incredible.
You have these two bachelors and Rodgers and Zach Wilson.
Yep.
There's plenty for everybody with a Hard Knocks in the Jets. Ross Tucker joins us, NFL Insider. We'll talk about a lot of different things in the NFL, certainly the Chiefs, as we make our way through to hour number 2 on Sports Daily. That's coming next.
on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily, hour number 2 coming. We're tracking down NFL insider Ross Tucker. We'll get him connected here shortly and jump right into that conversation. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor with you. Glad to have you here on KFH, 97.5 FM, 1240 AM. Glad to have you on our video stream, available to you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as we make our way through. It's going to be blistering hot. Tommy, is today a day, you're a big golf guy. Is today a day you even mess with it? Like, if you had the opportunity, someone said, hey, we're going to go play golf. We got a 2 o'clock tee time. You go up for that? You messing with that?
Yep, I would be there. I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah. What is the key to staying cool in golf? Wind? Driving around as much as you can in the golf cart?
Shade, as much shade as you can. Like if you're in your golf cart or even if you're walking, finding trees to stand under as much as you can, that's going to be the key. And like avoiding being out in the sun, like hit your ball and then get back in the shade. That's kind of the way that I do things.
What about guys like me who have to spend so much time searching for balls? Like that makes it.
Well, think about it this
harder.
way. I'm sure a lot of times you're looking for your golf balls in the trees. So
That's
you're
true.
shaded while you're searching for them.
That's true. What's an appropriate number of golf balls lost in any single round? Because I usually go through about 5 or 6.
Okay, that's a little high. That's a little much. I try to shoot for, like, if I can maybe lose 1 golf ball around, I feel pretty good about that. Actually, I mean, like, if I can use the same golf ball, sometimes I'll be like, all right, I've had this golf ball for 28, 29 holes. Let's see how far I can take this.
But at some point, I lose them probably more often because I get sick of looking for them. I can't figure out, with like the rise of Top Golf and everything, when we clearly have trackers in our balls, why is it not made it to regular golf where they just put a tracker in your ball that you can attach to something in your phone where you can just go straight to your ball and not have to look for it? It's my least favorite thing about golf is hunting for golf balls. If I didn't have to do that.
That's probably cost prohibitive a little bit. I mean, you're already spending, like, if you're playing good golf balls, and I don't know if you are, I don't know if you're going out and buying
those. I'm not.
Right. I don't know.
I'm happy to pick up a range ball. And
right. There you go. Like, that's already, if I'm going to buy a box, let's just say I'm going to buy a box of Titleist Pro V1s. That's going to set me back $50, and I can only imagine how much more that would be if they put like some kind of GPS tracker inside the ball.
But you're not going to lose them unless you hit them in the water. You wouldn't lose your ball. So that $50 box of balls might last you 2-3 times longer. You're not losing it in the rough.
Well, that's true. But I also then, would want to make sure that maybe I wouldn't play that golf ball on a hole with water because I wouldn't want to lose it in the water. I don't know. Like that makes it a little bit tougher.
Listen, if there's somebody smart enough to pull this off, we could be billionaires because everybody would do it, right? Like, I don't know enough about making a golf ball or computer chip technology, but I know that Top Golf puts chips in every one of those balls, and there's thousands of them out there flying all at once.
That's probably the biggest expense, though, in a Top Golf is the golf ball technology and mass producing those golf balls.
Yeah, maybe that's something to look into. Somebody smart help us out there. All right, as promised, we've got NFL insider Ross Tucker on the line with us. Insider calls presented by BetQL. Download the free BetQL app right now and get instant access to the industry's most advanced suite of sports betting tools right at your fingertips. Ross joins us for the first time here on Sports Daily. Ross, how are you, man?
I am doing awesome. I believe that this is my first time on ever in Wichita, Kansas, which is why I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. Can I ask you guys some questions first?
Absolutely.
Sure.
You start this thing off, Ross. We're here for you.
Okay. Is Wichita, Kansas 100% Chiefs fans or no?
95. There you do have Western Kansas, which if it bleeds into Wichita's sort of it's called South Central, but it's really it's southeast to people looking from afar. You'd have some Broncos fans though out in Western Kansas that might bleed into Wichita, and some Cowboys fans. I think we're 5 hours from Dallas only here in Wichita.
All right, so it's still 95%. 95% Chiefs fans. So no Rams fans, because that's even further away than Kansas. You guys are in the middle of the state. I got it. Okay. So maybe some Broncos fans in Western Kansas, and I understand about the Dallas. But you guys are a straight shot down to Dallas, right through Oklahoma City and Norman. That's interesting.
Yep. Straight shot.
All right. Next question. By the way, just so you know, when I do my power rankings every Tuesday on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, I mention Wichita, Kansas by name every single week. Yeah, because I always say that my power rankings are based on if these two teams played a series of games at a neutral site, like my backyard or like Wichita, Kansas. I don't know why Wichita is like my my neutral site, like center of the country. I know you guys are center of the country. But I always say that because if you're doing power rankings, it's not just about who beat who or who beat them. It's like, okay, well, what if they played a best of 5 at the biggest high school in Wichita? You know what I mean? Like, which team do you think would win that series of 5? So I mention Wichita all the time. My last Wichita question, before you guys can tap into my expertise, is what is Wichita known for? Whether it's like food or beers. Or are they still called the Shockers, or did they change their name?
Oh, no. Shockers is still, I believe, politically correct, but it's good. Wichita is known as the air capital.
Shocker baseball or Shocker basketball?
Basketball now. I think that may have been a little different 20 years ago. It's a hot topic around here. Shocker baseball hasn't really been in the postseason for a decade, if you can believe it. Shocker basketball.
Baseball always used to be like the best team.
Used to be, yeah. Like College World Series, good. All the pros, yeah. It was and they're trying to get back to that. But basketball here is you've got so you got a dynamic of K-State, KU, and Wichita State, all sort of melding together. But the one thing about Wichita State is when they're really good, it's sort of unified. Like everybody's into it because it's treated like a pro team. They sell out every game. They got a great arena. It's basketball. Wichita State basketball is king around here. Wichita's known as the air capital of the world, Ross. So like all the aerospace manufacturing, they make airplanes and, private jets. There's like 6 airports here. So that's probably what it's known for the most. And look, isn't food and beer? Doesn't everybody claim their food and beer is the best?
Okay, but if I went there, you would tell me to go. Like I know Kansas City is like the barbecues. If I went to Wichita, are you like, oh, you got to go to this place, you got to order this, you got to drink that?
I think barbecue is in that a little bit. I mean, I think that some of the Kansas City barbecue bleeds down I-35 to Wichita. There's definitely some inspiration barbecue wise in Wichita that comes from Kansas City, I would say.
I would tell you, Ross, because I'm not from here. I'm from Amarillo, Texas. So I came here as an outsider. What surprised me the most was Mediterranean food, which, believe it or not, is not a massive thing that happens in the panhandle of Texas. And it's really good here, and there's a lot of it. Mediterranean food surprised me. And breakfast, Tommy, there's 2 or 3 really, popular and famous breakfast spots. When the ESPN crews come through, they go to a place called Doodah Diner, which is downtown. It's known for wild and crazy breakfasts. And then there's this exploding in popularity place called Home. So there, breakfast maybe, or Mediterranean food would be my.
Man, I would not have guessed Mediterranean food in the middle of Kansas at all. But
isn't that crazy? It's the aerospace thing. I think it's created a pretty diverse culture here, which is broad. I don't know the history of it, but I think that's right. I think that's what I've been told.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you guys coaching me up. Now I'll go as long as you want. Ask me any football question you want. But I'm like, you know what's funny? And I know you guys brought me on to talk football, and that's fine. But I already know. Like any question you ask me, I already know what I think about the football thing, and I'll tell you the answer. I like learning about other people. Like, I like learning about other things. So I feel very knowledgeable about Wichita now if I ever need it. Thank you.
If you come to Wichita, all you need to know to make it in with the locals is that there's a fierce East Side versus West Side rivalry on either side of what's called here in the state of Kansas. It's not the Arkansas River; it's the Arkansas River. There's an Arkansas City. It's very real. It is pronounced Arkansas in this state. You'll win with the locals if you start there.
You know what's so funny about you saying that? You guys are going to die. I live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is the state capital of Pennsylvania, okay? And there's a big river that goes right through the middle called the Susquehanna River. And around here, you're either East Shore or West Shore. And it's not that big a deal for me because I'm not from here, and neither is my wife. But people that, like, grew up around here and are from here, like, I've had multiple people tell me that are on the East Shore that they don't ever go to the West Shore. And people on the West Shore don't ever go to the East Shore. And I'm like, it's just like 12 minutes away, right? Like, it's just a bridge. Like, there's like 6 bridges that go over this river. Like, it's hilarious to me. They act like it's a different country, a different world. And like, I don't ever go to the West Shore. I don't ever go over there. Like, it's bizarre to me. I mean, I'm going to the West Shore tonight for dinner. Like, I don't really get it, but that's definitely a thing here. That's funny. I didn't know you guys had the same thing.
Exact same thing. Exact same thing. Exact same dynamic and language. People on the East Side don't go over to the West Side. I'll spare you the language that was used to me when I moved here from the way one side would talk about the other. But yeah, it's real. But they're unified. They're unified, Ross, in the love for the Chiefs. Do you feel the same way we feel right now, or at least that I feel? Or is DeAndre Hopkins just waiting on the Chris Jones deal to get done? It feels like he wants to be a Chief, and I think the Chiefs would love to have him.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think he would love to be a Chief or a Buffalo Bill, but I don't think that they're offering nearly the amount of money that he wants. And here's the thing, too. Like, I get it. About him going to the Chiefs to try to win a championship. But let's also be honest, like, it's really hard to go back-to-back. Really, really hard to win back-to-back. I mean, the last time anybody did it was 20 years ago with the Patriots. And so, there's a pretty good percentage chance that the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl and win it, but it's still really low. I mean, especially in the AFC, as tough as the AFC is. So I think, and I wrote an article about this for the 33rd team, every player has to kind of decide how much they're willing to sacrifice in order to try to win that championship. He's made a lot of money already, so he can decide whether or not he's willing to do that. I personally believe that he'll end up in Cleveland. And I'll tell you why. Number one, first of all, the Chiefs don't really need him, right? I mean, everybody is always talking about the Chiefs and receivers. They have like 7 legit receivers. I mean, Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Guy Moore, Justin Watson. They took Rashee Rice in the 2nd round. Richie James had a good year for the Giants last year. I don't know, maybe Justin Ross won't actually get cleared to play. But, I mean, I just don't think the Chiefs are hurting for receiver as much other people are. And I really don't think they're going to pay that much for Hopkins. So is Hopkins going to play in Buffalo or Kansas City for peanuts? Or is he going to go to Cleveland where they could really use him opposite Amari Cooper, where he knows the quarterback, Deshaun Watson, and where the Browns actually have a lot of salary cap space? And guess what? The Browns will probably give him a lot of money. You know why? Because they've had back-to-back losing seasons. And they gave up a ton to get Deshaun Watson. So the head coach, Kevin Stefanski, the GM, Andrew Berry, they're probably going to get fired if they don't win double-digit games with Watson this year. Like, if they don't make it work with Watson this year, they're probably going to get fired. So, I mean, maybe they'll overpay for Hopkins, but who cares? It's not their money. And if they get it done and they make the playoffs, they'll probably get contract extensions, and they can worry about paying Hopkins too much after that.
Ross, we talked about this last hour. I want to get your thoughts on it. So, the announcement came down earlier today that the Jets are going to be featured on Hard Knocks. Is there another team in the NFL that has as many juicy storylines going into this season as the New York Jets, with Aaron Rodgers going there, definitely going all in to try to win a championship this year with all the talent around Aaron Rodgers? What are you thinking about how that's all going to play out this year with the Jets?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm thrilled that that's who the NFL is having do this. I mean, I think you're right. I don't think there is a team that would be more interesting. Head coach, GM on the hot seat. They make the big swing in the trade for Aaron Rodgers. They have the longest playoff drought. I think of definitely the NFL. I think it might have be of any team in all pro sports, which is kind of amazing. And the other part of it is the AFC is going to be highly entertaining. The Jets are in a big market. I just think and they don't want to be on it. I mean, they were kind of vocal that they don't want to be on it, which I think makes it interesting as well. There's just a lot of I'm glad the NFL picked them. I guess you'd rather have a volunteer than someone that you forced, than a hostage, so to speak, or as Mike Tomlin would say. But I also think that adds the intrigue a little bit too. Like, how are they going to be towards the cameras? Like, what's it going to be? They obviously don't want to do it. So I think it actually adds to the intrigue that they were so public in their disdain for it.
It's interesting too, as they're in the AFC. Ross Tucker, NFL insider, joining us here, and happy to have Ross on. The Jets with that move are going all in for a Super Bowl, but the AFC is just brutal, and we all know that. As you go through your power rankings, like, I assume Chiefs are one, but who is their big? Are you team Cincinnati? Are you team Buffalo? Maybe the Jets have moved in. Like, who is, in your opinion, the biggest competitor in the AFC? Obviously Philadelphia is, but just in the AFC, who should Kansas City be the most concerned with?
Yeah, no, it's the Bengals. I mean, it's the Bengals, and it's going to be the Bengals until proven otherwise, right? I mean, that's why my favorite team I played for was the Bills, and the fans are mad at me up there because I ranked their coach lower in my rankings than they wanted me to. But I mean, here's how I look at it: 6 years, Mahomes has been the starting quarterback for the Chiefs, right? And they've made the AFC Championship game all 6 years, and 3 Super Bowls, and they've won 2 of them. 5 years starting quarterback. The Bills have only even gotten to the AFC Championship game one time. I mean, for Burrow and the Bengals, 2 years Burrow's been healthy. Both years AFC Championship, 1 year Super Bowl. So to me, it's the Bengals. I guess it's still the Bills after that. Although there'll be a bunch of other teams I think could be in the mix. I think the Ravens could end up being in the mix. I think the Jags, who gave the Chiefs a pretty good game, will get better again. Chargers might be better with a new OC. And obviously the Jets will be better. I think it's a lot to ask the Jets, though, to be Super Bowl contenders. I mean, when's the last time a team kind of came from nowhere to go that far? That feels like a pretty tall task to ask a team that hasn't even been in the playoffs since 2012 to go to the AFC postseason. And likely, guys, have to win at Cincinnati, have to win at Kansas City. I mean, good luck.
Would you? I mean, are the Rams with Stafford in that mix of a team that's been able to do that? They were probably further ahead than, and I know they went to the Super Bowl with Goff, but just a talented roster that added the quarterback and was able to get it over the edge. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good example. Now, to your point, they had still, I mean, the year before, they had won a playoff game with like the Walford guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and they had made the divisional round and they had lost at Green Bay. So they were further ahead than the Jets were, and they weren't in as tough of a conference. But yeah, I do think Stafford is probably the example of a guy that, came in and was able to get him over the hump. And I think Rodgers will get the Jets over the hump of the playoffs. And I think similar to the Cleveland conversation we were having, I think that Robert Saleh, the head coach, Joe Douglas, the GM, will get contract extensions as a result. Which, by the way, like, do I think they overpaid for Rodgers? Yeah. In terms of the draft picks, yeah. But why do they care about next year's first round pick?
Right.
If they get fired, who cares? I mean, just remember this. I played for 5 teams in 7 years. Okay. Every single person involved with the whole league is acting in their own personal best self-interest, right? So of course they're going to make the trade for Aaron Rodgers and overpay him or give up too much to get him because they're going to end up getting contract extensions. They're going to make the playoff this year. Woody Johnson, the owner, is going to give them both like 4-year, 5-year contract extensions for over $20 million, and they're going to be so happy. They're rich forever, and if they stink after that, they stink after that. I mean, they did the right thing. I would do the same thing if I was Joe Douglas. I have another question for you guys, by the way. Football
Sure.
one this time. Are you ready?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. How much have you guys, if at all, talked about the field conditions of the Super Bowl?
It came up. It certainly came up for about a week after. Probably would have come up more had the Chiefs not emerged victorious, I would imagine, because the chatter around here would have certainly. But it was a disaster for everybody involved. But yeah, it was
Total
a problem.
disgrace. The only reason why I bring it up is because I was flying back yesterday, and an Eagles fan was next to me on the plane, and they recognized me and started talking to me about it. And he was still so mad about the field and was asking me, how is that possible? How has it happened? And I will say this, I give the Eagles players organization a lot of credit. Like, they never once complained about the Bradbury call at the end of the game. They didn't complain about the field conditions. But that personally, like, if I were an Eagles player, that would bother me the rest of my life. And who knows? Maybe the Eagles would have lost by more if it was a good field condition. I don't know. You know what I mean? But I do know that their edge rushers were slipping the whole time. I think some like psychopath went through and charted how many times each player on each team slipped, and the Eagles slipped more than the Chiefs, which I don't know what that means, if anything. But at any rate, it's just a disgrace that those guys had to play on that. It's just such a stupid thing for us to be talking about after the game. You know what I mean?
What made that hard is, a couple of years when the Chiefs were in Miami for the Super Bowl, we interviewed, and because I work for a TV station here too, and we were out there covering the Chiefs. George Toma, who's the head groundkeeper, has a rich history in Kansas City and with the Chiefs and everything, and great guy, was awesome, a really cool personality. So like that whole time that's happening, I'm like, oh my God, poor George here. And that made it a little more difficult, here on a local
that like
level
his
too.
Last game too before he retired.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's been doing it.
He's like
forever.
94.
94 years old, has done it forever and never seen anything like that. And he, of course, deflected the blame, and I don't know what that means, but that made that harder for us here around here too, because he was right in the middle of it. This poor old guy who's been doing this forever.
Yeah, it's just a shame. I mean, it's just I don't know how that happens, but it's just a shame for everybody involved. It's just like mind-boggling that happened. Way worse to me than like the penalty they called on Bradbury. I mean, I didn't like the call, but that's like a one-time thing.
Right.
Whereas the field is like every player of the whole game. It's just a shame.
I've got one more for you, Ross, and it's inspired by if they're playing in Wichita, Kansas. So I'm going to give you this question because I think we're entering the territory where it's okay to start talking about it. Where everybody, you've got a draft of every quarterback all time who's ever played the game. All the games get played on a neutral field here in Wichita, Kansas. You can have any quarterback that's ever played. Who do you take one, and where does Patrick Mahomes right now fit into that scenario?
Well, I'm still taking Tom Brady one. And I want to clarify something. Are we just showing up and playing a game that day, or is this the guy I'm picking as quarterback of my franchise for like the next 5-10 years, if that makes sense?
God, that's a great question. As I just made
because
it up,
if they're just showing up that day, and it's like recess or like you know what, I'm going to pick Mahomes. But, you know, having played with him, and I've heard great things about Mahomes, having played with Tom Brady, what I can tell you is it's like Monday through Saturday where he wins. Like, it's Monday through Saturday, year round, that makes him great. I can't even describe to you guys. You know, I'll tell you guys something. In New England, the first thing they do at 8 a.m. every day is they show the team meeting. They show the 5 worst plays from practice the day before. And that's like supposed to be your motivation, right? Like you don't want to be on the low light video. Belichick makes fun of you or says whatever. And so you don't want to be in that video. It's like 100% negative reinforcement. And I think Belichick thinks like that's like what works, right? But the reality is that Tom is such a psycho. 18 years I played football. I never had a quarterback that cared as much about the snap as Tom. Like he's a psycho about every little, and I mean that as a compliment, by the way, total compliment. And so what happens is you will never find a single guy that played with Brady in the NFL that will say a single bad word about him. Not one. I mean, he blow dried his hair, but he makes so much money off his looks, I'm fine with that. But you won't find a single guy to say anything negative about him. And the reason why the Patriots teams, I think, have been so good, or Brady teams are so good, nobody wants to let him down. Nobody, like, you're so on top of your you-know-what because you don't want to let him down. He's actually harder on himself than he is on everybody else. Like, if he messes up, he loses his mind, right? And gets so mad at himself. But you just don't want to let him down. And I don't know where Mahomes is on that spectrum, but we have like a 25-year sample size of Brady. So if you're saying that we're just going to show up and play a game in Wichita, I think I'll take Mahomes. But if you're saying like who's the head of the franchise for 20 years, I'm going to go with Brady for all the reasons I just mentioned.
And it's great insight there, and it does make me wonder because Mahomes has some of that. I mean, you hear some of those great teammate, you know, all that stuff too. I just wonder because I think in other sports, like with Michael Jordan, I don't know that anybody's ever now going to overtake this mythical creature that's been ingrained in people's heads. But in football, like what would it take for Mahomes? Let's say he wins 3 more championships in Kansas City or wherever. Are we ever gonna be able to replace that GOAT status of Brady? Is it unattainable or is it attainable, do you think?
I think it is attainable. Now I don't think Mahomes will end up doing it, but after last year, boy, he got a much better chance than I thought. Much better chance than I thought. When they had to move on from Tyreek Hill, I thought they'd take a small step back last year. For them to win the championship, the whole thing, in the 1 year without Tyreek in my mind, gives them a chance to really be good for a while. I think the next thing will be the Kelsey thing, right? Like whenever Kelsey's done, do they still have enough around Mahomes that they're still winning it every year? I also think what will be difficult for him is it looks like the AFC is going to be really rough for a while. I'm not sure that was necessarily the case for Brady all the time, although, you know, he did have Peyton Manning to go against. He did have the Steelers with Big Ben. So he had some stuff to go up against. I think it is attainable for Mahomes. I don't think he'll do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I mean, I don't know. I think there's probably a 25% chance that Mahomes gets close to the number of Super Bowl appearances and wins that Brady had. You know, his game is a lot different than Brady's. So will he be able to do it like late 30s, early 40s? There's just a lot of variables there.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you on that. Well, Ross, man, we really appreciate it. Let's do this again as we make our way into the season because there's a lot of good stuff, and we can learn more about Wichita and more about Pennsylvania, which I know nothing about. So
who should I be on?
That as well.
Should I be an East Side or a West Side guy?
Well, you're talking to 2 East Siders now. Yeah. I would never want to offend the West Siders out there, but East Side for life. Just
Yeah, but if
FYI.
you guys are East Side, I'm East Side. Sorry, West
Yeah.
Side. Get with the times. Move to the East Side.
They'll fight you about that. But are you East Shore or West Shore?
Oh, I'm East Shore. But like
Well, there
all
you
my
go.
friends are West Shore.
There we
I
go.
can't
We'll
even
be
tell you what the
adopted.
people on the East Shore call the West Shore. I got to go. I got another one at 11:30. You guys are awesome. See ya.
See you, Ross. Ross Tucker, NFL Insider. We appreciate that visit. We'll do that again soon for sure as we make our way through. A lot of fun there. Again, Insider Calls presented by BetQL. Download the free BetQL app right now and get instant access to the industry's most advanced suite of sports betting tools right at your fingertips. Ross is a big fantasy football guy, Tommy. We didn't even get a chance to get into that, so we probably need to do that at some point, as you and I are both fantasy football nerds as well. 869-1240. We went a little long there. We'll come back. We'll react. Get to it on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Our thanks to Ross Tucker for joining in on the conversation. A lot of fun stuff. Ross, the character. I knew that was going to be great, Tommy, when you said that.
That was awesome.
He was jumping in. He's all over everything. You hear him a lot here with us because he's on a lot of the Westwood One broadcasts. He's a good analyst. He's entertaining. He has fun with it. He reminds me, honestly, Tommy, of so many offensive linemen that I've become friends with over the years at all kinds of different levels because, you know, the personalities there. I sometimes you're like, man, why do we give so much attention to the prima donnas? The offensive line is the place to go. And they do make great analysts. I don't think there's any coincidence with that. So we appreciate Ross's visit there with us here on Sports Daily. You'll be able to go back and listen to that if you missed any of it, including our East Side, West Side conversation. Jimmy 5 says that Ross was great, loved it, but he has to disagree with us. West Side. We Tommy and I are both East Siders, but I don't care.
I do have to clarify. I'm an East Sider, but I work on the West Side, so I have to cross the river every day. So I kind of, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of half and half.
I have businesses.
Is that fair?
I have businesses on both sides of the river. I appreciate both of them greatly. And I'm not even saying that like as a wave, a neutral flag, because I love the rivalry. I think it's fantastic. I think it's awesome. I think it's cool. But as an outsider, you come in and everyone's like, are you East Side or you West Side? Literally the first question I get everywhere I go when we first moved here. And I'm like, guys, I don't know where we are. Like I know nothing about what side I'm on. I'm just trying to figure out how to drive to work every day.
I do have to say, I grew up, so I'm a Wichitan. I grew up in this area. I grew up frequenting the West Side. That was just kind of where we did things. My life was changed when I discovered what the East Side had to offer, and so I guess I consider myself a true East Sider now.
It is like two different cities. I think it's one of the cool things about this city as a whole. And again, we've got great friends on the East Side and the West Side. We've got businesses on both the East Side and the West Side. I've covered schools for a decade on both sides of the river, East Side and West Side. They each has great, suburbs and metro area cities on both sides. I love both. I genuinely mean that, but I don't know that I love it more than the fact that there's this great rivalry between the two sides. I think it's fantastic. And
I've had people tell me before that, that are East Siders, if you cross the river and you go to the West Side, you're essentially in Colorado. That's basically in their minds the way that it works. You're basically in Dodge City by the time you go to the West Side.
I won't name drop here, but when I first moved here, my wife and I went to a restaurant and somebody I worked with, and it's not anybody on air, so you might as well not guess, but I'm still not going to name drop, but somebody that worked in the building is like East Side or West Side. And I was like, I think technically we're on the East Side. We don't really know. And he was like, well, that's good because, it's all the, what term did he use? It was something crazy. And I just kept thinking like, this has to be like a thing that has been invented over the years, but it was really like something. I probably shouldn't repeat it on the radio, but I was like, whoa, like, okay.
It's a
All right,
real
and this
thing.
was he was at like a family dinner, and he just says this out loud, and I'm like, okay, we got a thing here.
And you know what? You can look at, even high schools, like you've got Capon and Carroll, and like there's the rivalry there, East Side, West Side. Like there are several examples of that for sure.
I love it. Mike chimes in, says the West Side has better movie theater. Mike's making our segues for us, which is perfect there. Boulevard Town West is where we're going to give away a pair of movie tickets right now. I think we have just a handful left, and we need to move these today. So Mission Impossible is playing Boulevard Town West. We'll give away another pair of tickets to our first caller, 869-1240. Jad will get that taken care of. So to what Ross was talking about there, I have begun to significantly ponder the idea that Mahomes could be the GOAT. And I think we're to the point now with a second championship where we can start to wonder. Now, he's not caught Brady. He's not caught a lot of people yet. But when you get to 2 and you do the things he does on the field, Tommy, I do think we can begin to wonder about it. I'll have a shift this weekend on CBS Sports Radio across the country. And I may pose this to hear from, because obviously we're connected to Mahomes so closely. We watch him closely, everything like that. I do want to hear what other people think about it. And it's why I ask people like Ross Tucker that question. Like, where is Mahomes in that all-time conversation right now? Clearly far from done with what he'll do in the NFL. But where does it sit right now? Because I think that if we're being honest in the conversation, he already does belong in that. If you could have anybody, who would you take conversation, right? The conversation that includes Brady, maybe includes Manning, includes Elway, right? Includes, Unitas and Staubach and Joe Montana, obviously. Like, I think he's there in that group already, Tommy. And now the question becomes, how much higher can he get? Longevity certainly has a piece of that. But I think we're to the point right now where we should be having that conversation.
I think that right now, if Patrick Mahomes decided that he was done in the NFL today, I think he would go to Canton right now. And he's played 6 seasons in the NFL, right?
Yep.
So, and that doesn't, like, you look at Tom Brady's career, and he had Super Bowls early in his career and all of that. But I don't know if after 6 years in the NFL, you could make the argument that Brady, had he retired after 6 years, would have gone to Canton. Maybe. But I think that shows that the path that Mahomes is on, if he can sustain it, I think he can surpass Brady as far as Super Bowl wins and individual accomplishments and all of that. I think it can happen. Will it? I don't know. Time will tell. The one thing about trying to predict that is that you never know the way the injuries are going to happen and things like that. So that makes it really difficult. But I certainly think that, we've talked about it before. The path is there. It's been laid for Mahomes to continue to grow this dynasty to a point to where eventually it does surpass what Tom Brady has done.
If you just look at the first 6 years, which for Brady would be 2001 through 6, right? Statistically, he'd be behind, but the game was a lot different then too. Yeah. So it's not fair. And I think you do have to look at the wins. And Brady's numbers were good, by the way. He had 2 top 3 MVP finishes in those years.
But I'm not sure it's really hit his stride after 6 years. Yeah,
he hit his stride more in the 10 years after that, where he had, I think, 2 MVPs, all the Super Bowls. He really started to put up, comic book stats as the league changed and the Patriots sort of changed the way that they played offense and all of those things. And it was good to get Ross Tucker's insight on Brady in those times and why guys like Ross Tucker, who played with Brady, would ever, like, it's going to be hard when you have that sort of insight into what he brought to the table of ever considering anybody to have that level of whatever it is competitive. And that's where I think Brady and Jordan will always be comparable. But Mahomes has that too, right? Like he watch him play golf in the match and do all of these other things that he does. That's there for him too. 869-1240. Congratulations to all our movie ticket winners today. Short segment here. We went long with Ross, so we'll come back. We'll continue on Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Glad to be a part of your day. Glad to have you listening to us or watching us on the video streams, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You can always find those. Tom and Casey, our last winners to see Mission Impossible. Happy to do that for everybody. Glad to be able to do that for everybody. And we hope that you enjoyed the show there. I think, Tommy, it's getting great reviews from the critics. You know, I don't always agree with the critics. I usually... Like when they do is it Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, I'm usually more interested in like the fan rankings than I am the critic rankings. I don't have a lot in common with movie critics. I have a whole lot more in common with fans of movies. A film class was not a good place for me in college, where I was being lectured on the movies that I liked and told what I should and shouldn't like. It's really hard for a contrarian smart aleck to sit in a class like that and keep his mouth shut, which I certainly did not. But I take offense to people. I take offense to people, and I do it sometimes with music, and I have to watch myself, Tommy. Like, it bugs me when people are lectured on what they should and shouldn't like with movies. And maybe I do it a little bit with music, even though it's not a lot. Like, I love everything. I love any music that makes people happy or whatever. Sometimes I catch myself and it's like that was too like country right now. It's like, it's too poppy for me. And sometimes I just like shake my head at the lyrics and this is so stupid because I like the songwriting and all that stuff. And then I'm like, why do I care? Like, blast it from the rooftops while I'm at the pool. Cause that's where, but movies, it really bugs me. Like, don't tell me what to like. Don't tell me what I need to like and not like.
There are movies, though, that I can think of off the top of my head that have been very, very, very critically acclaimed that I don't think I would have ever watched had I not gotten the recommendation from the critics. And they've been great. Like, there have been a few that have not been good that I'm like, all right, I'm completely bored. This doesn't work. But God, I don't even remember the name of it.
Last year's Best Picture in the Oscars, I thought, was the biggest waste of time I've spent in a movie theater in forever. Was it Pizza Candy, Licorice Pizza? We went in the theater and watched that movie, and I was like, what was this?
Do you remember a couple of years ago that movie Parasite, the Korean one? I think it won Best Picture. And I was kind of like, I don't think I want to watch it. And then we had an evening, we rented it at home, and it was incredible. Like, it was so good. So like I respect the critics. I don't always agree with the critics, but I've watched movies that I've really enjoyed that I wouldn't have otherwise watched had it not been for the critics.
I respect what they do, but don't tell me what to like. Like, when I tell you that Dumb and Dumber is my favorite movie, I don't need your eyes to roll. Like, it is. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever. And I think
I'll
the
just
hardest thing to do,
you.
by the way.
That's all. I mean, I won't say anything. I'll just silently judge you.
What's easier to do? Make somebody laugh or make somebody uncomfortable? Right? Like, just because it's a comedy doesn't mean anything. It was ahead of its time. I don't care what you think about what I don't watch it then if you don't like it, because I'm not going to watch a lot of the things. Like, we would sit there in that film class and watch movies where I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, why do we need to, like, that made me really uncomfortable. Does that make people happy to be uncomfortable like that? Because not me. Like, I'd rather be very,
that's why I will never voluntarily, willingly sit down and watch a horror movie.
Oh,
because I don't know why people find that entertaining. Like, why is being scared entertaining? That doesn't resonate with me at all.
Yeah, I mean, same here. I get made fun of for that too. I hate them. In fact, I won't do it. Yeah, I don't even know where we started with that. How did we get to that? 869-1240. We'll wrap it up after this. All right, everybody, that's it. Thanks for joining us today here on Sports Daily. Our thanks to Ross Tucker for joining the program. We've got betting conversation tomorrow with Chelsea Messenger coming up. Tim Fitzgerald joins us, I think, from Big 12 Media Days to get a K-State report, and we'll hear from Brett Yormark between now and then, so we'll get his thoughts there as well. Regular day of programming here on the network. Locally, don't forget, Bob and Jeff coming to you from 2 to 4. Glad to be here with you, everybody. Tommy and I will be back tomorrow. For Jad Chambers producing, I'm Jacob Albracht. We'll see you then.